like when you numb the bad, you also numb the good. It didn't just stop me from reacting to my problems. It stopped me from reacting to damn near anything. Welcome to DFW Grit. I'm Dr. James Taylor, and I'm your host, and this is more than just a podcast. We dive into the stories of the movers, the shakers, the small business owners, the entrepreneurs, right here in the DFW Metroplex. This is your home for authentic, real stories that prove what happens when you don't back down. Let's get to work. Hey, what's going on, everyone? I am Dr. Taylor. This is another episode of DFW Grit, but this one is special. They're all special, but this one is expertly special. Why is that? Because this is the 100th episode of DFW Grit. Technically, no, but it's the 100th time I have stepped in front of the camera, turned the mic on, and put something out there for you to, hopefully learn from. So I say not technically the 100th episode of DFW Grit, because obviously, if you've been following along for a moderate length of time, this used to be Fueled by Spite. Fueled by Spite was brash. It was unapologetic. It was aggressive, and it needed to be. That was a podcast that needed to come out. Hell, that was the podcast that I needed to put out when this whole thing started. And through this evolution of the podcast, there's also been an unexpected, in foresight, unexpected, in hindsight, completely expected evolution of myself. And that is what I want to go into with you today for our 100th episode special of DFW Grit. So, first of all, to those of you who've been around since episode 1, thanks, man. And ladies, everybody, everyone who's watched from day 1, or even if you picked it up somewhere between day 1 and day 100, I really appreciate it. And I want you to know that, like, honestly, sincerely, from my heart, it's awesome. It's really cool to see. So just ever so short, thank you to those of you who've been sticking with this thing since the thing started. To those of you who are kind of upset when we made the name change, because there were people out there like, oh yeah, Spite, hell yeah, that's fantastic. And it was. Fueled by Spite was fantastic at the time. It was fantastic for what I needed it to be fantastic for. DFW Grit is a beautiful evolution of it. And as such, so am I. So, like I said, this is the 100th episode special. What I want to do is I want to reflect, and not just on what we built, but what it's become and what I've become. So, bit of an origin story here, right? When I launched this podcast, when I launched Fueled by Spite, like I said, we talked a lot about aggression. We talked a lot about anger, and that's still, man, I'll tell you what, that is still in there. But what I came to realize, both through the podcast and through myself, was that anger, that anger was used for motivation. When the motivation ran out, that energy was needed at the time, and it still is from time to time. But also, too, like I'm realizing it's not sustainable. Okay, so you can certainly strive to be better than everybody around you, and I still like that, and I do. It's still part of me. But again, that's not the motivation that's going to carry you all the way through. I mean, there were wonderful guests throughout the whole thing, and one of the early guests, and I brought this up time and time again because it just stuck with me, was when Evan Cutts was on here. It's like, man, what keeps you going? And he just goes, proof. The evidence, he said. What keeps you going? Evidence. I mean, this guy's an MMA fighter. He had a goal to get 40 fights before he turned 40. Like, the guy gets punched in the face for fun. And it was one of my earliest episodes, and it was one of the best things that I ever heard. What keeps you going? The evidence. But eventually, like, I realized that this thing that I was building, it wasn't necessarily a platform, right? And some of you may have noticed this. This thing really turned into a mirror. It turned into a mirror of the guy that's talking to you in the camera here. And if you've been following the recent episodes, there's been a turning point throughout this whole thing. But it was only recently, if you will, that I became aware of it. For those of you that follow off of here, specifically my public profile page on Facebook, James N. Taylor. So that's not my personal page. It's my public profile. And what I do on there, I've mentioned this in a couple other episodes, is I do just long form posts. And I started it as a way to journal for all intents and purposes. Is, hey, here's some things on my mind. Here's some things that I'm trying to solve, or that I'm we'll say struggling with, or something like that. They're just thoughts I needed to get out. And I noticed there was a turn probably about 3 weeks ago where the stuff I started writing was almost almost more personal than I intended. But then reading and rereading it, it started to actually pull things out of me that, like I guess I knew were there, but I hadn't necessarily acknowledged earlier, if you will. And that's the thing too. Like, as I've been going through this, I had a conversation with somebody the other day, one of my coaches, Mark from Unforget Yourself. And I prefaced, I don't remember what it was that I said, but I prefaced it with, I don't see myself as like a woo-woo person. And he stopped me right there. He goes, but you totally are. You believe in energy transfer. You believe in the universe around you, and you believe in, things conspiring for your greatest good. He's like, James, you're totally a woo-woo person. You just haven't owned it yet. And it's like, fuck. You're right. Because I am. Like, I fully believe in the deepest parts of my being that there is nothing but good to come to me. I've said this before. My wife has a great line, and I steal it from her every chance I get. Jesus loves me, and everything goes my way. I don't care if you don't believe in Jesus, whatever. Just put whatever you want in there. The universe loves me, and everything goes my way. That's woo woo. That's crystals and all that kind of bullshit, right? And I said, even right there, just felt it's all kind of bullshit. But also at the same time, I totally prescribe to this stuff. It's like, I'm not a woo woo. You totally are. And I am. And it's a weird thing. Like, why would I not accept that? Right. So, like I said, this turned into a mirror. And the thing, like, I always said things like that. Right. One of the things I would say routinely is like, I would say things don't bother me. I let them just roll off my back. But what I meant was, I won't let things bother me. So, a little bit of background. The past 2 weeks have been wonderfully eye-opening for me. So, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to go to this mastermind. I go to it every year. There's a group of about 8 of us or so. And it's a smattering of chiropractors and a smattering of other business people. And it's dudes. It's tribal in a sense. It's guys. It's called Bourbon Nights. We go there, we drink some bourbon, we shoot some hogs, we shoot other stuff, and we talk about life and business and things like that. And one of the guys that I was there talking to, his name was Sam Wang, and he owns something called Chiro One, and he owns 160 chiropractic offices throughout the country. So it was interesting, as we were talking about problems that we have in business, and one of the things was, he goes, I don't really have problems. I do have things I'm trying to figure out how to solve, but I don't really have problems. And even just that little shift, that little change in words, it's like, just, I don't have problems. What am I trying to solve instead? Um, that in and of itself kind of turned something in me. So after that weekend, the following weekend, I had my rugby alumni event. And prior to going to Oklahoma, prior to going to Bourbon Nights, I was like, at the beginning of the year, hell, since the last one, I was stoked. I was ready to go. These things are fantastic. It's a way, you come back, you hang out with your old buddies, you relive the glory days, if you will. But sometime before going to Oklahoma, I realized I wasn't excited about it this time anymore. I mean, even though I was at the beginning of the year, but for whatever reason, this time, my excitement was waning the closer we got to the event. And then I go to Bourbon Nights up in Oklahoma, and something clicked or unclicked. I don't know. There's a click that was made. And I come home and I tell my wife, like, hey, I'm not going to go to alumni. And it's a big deal for both of us because she is friends with my friends, right? So this is not only a time for me to go back and hang out with my friends, it's time for her to go back and hang out with her friends. I said, hey, I'm not going to go. And she was excuse me, she was upset. Understandably so. I don't fault her for it. She was looking forward to it too. And I just dropped this on her. I'm not going to go. Why not? She says. And I said, I don't think it's the best place for me right now. She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, it's not somewhere that I want to be. And then the day after that, I told her, hey, I'm going to go and get an Airbnb by myself because this weekend is already blocked off. I've already got it blocked off on the schedule here at the office. I'm going to get an Airbnb and I'm going to go by myself. And I'm going to sit by myself and sit with myself for a weekend. And man, I shit you not, it was one of the best ideas I have ever had. So what I realized in this weekend, I went in with my Remarkable here, and I went in with my computer because I made sure that the Airbnb had the internet. And then I hopped on there, and for anyone who is new to AI or dabbling with AI and knows that it's more powerful than Google, but doesn't know how to make it more powerful, I'm going to give you a real simple framework for using AI. Your question or your prompt is 3 parts. It's I want you to act as a blank, and then you put an expert in some way, shape, or form. I want you to act as Gary Vee. I want you to act as Sid Williams, a fantastic chiropractor. I want you to act as Jocko. I don't know if this works, but it gets the idea across. A male mental health expert. So what I did is I want you to act as this. I need you to help me figure out, and then you enter whatever it is you need to figure out. And then ask me any clarifying questions you have before proceeding. So it's the 3 parts. Act as if, give it context, ask questions beforehand. And literally that's all I did all weekend long is I started with that prompt and then I just went to town. And one thing that I noticed in going through this, like I said, I used to not let things bother me. And that's what I said. But what I meant was I won't let things bother me. And we've talked about how this office flooded. Okay. And what I realized was when this thing flooded, I closed down. What I realized when the office flooded, I, I was a leader. I had staff, I had a family, I had bills, I had stuff, and I decided, I don't know why, but I decided that I couldn't show fear from this. I couldn't show it. Um, like when it happened, like again, there's water everywhere. I'll tell you right now, I cried for maybe about 3.5 seconds, and it was like, oh, okay, gotta get back to it. Um, but what I did was I realized I closed myself off, not just from fear, but from any and all emotion. Like I didn't in closing down the emotion of fear, I closed down everything. So if this is my emotional range, and homeostasis is right there in the middle. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to feel anything bad. But also I realized I wasn't able to feel anything good. Right. And well, I didn't realize that then. I realize this now. So not only were my emotions of fear tempered, but so were my emotions of happiness and joy and things like that. And mind you, this happened like 3 or 4 years ago. And I didn't realize till this last weekend how that truly affected me. So I've got this weekend to myself. I made this decision to not do something that I really, really wanted to do that I was looking forward to, and then it was no longer. And like I said, I had things that didn't necessarily bother me, but what I realized was it's not that I didn't let them bother me; it's that I ignored them this whole time. So, like when the office flooded, like I said, I became stoic, if you will. I became a leader, in whatever that means. But like when you numb the bad, you also numb the good. It didn't just stop me from reacting to my problems, it stopped me from reacting to damn near anything, right? So this weekend, I reclaimed my emotional range. I reclaimed the spectrum that my emotions reside on. And not from a liability standpoint. So like when I was sitting at the mastermind, I had these guys that I realized like, holy shit, like they are just like me, right? They're just dudes with wives and with kids, and they're facing the same kind of stuff that I'm facing. And I realized like their success didn't eliminate their problems. They just traded them for new ones, right? They didn't solve all the stuff they're trying to solve. They're just solving different things, but we're all still just people just trying to figure it out. And so that weekend kind of reminded me of that feeling that the strong one doesn't mean the silent one. Because just because you're strong, just because you're dealing with stuff, doesn't mean you have to deal with it in silence. I mean, I've talked to you about having coaches and things like that. Like even there'd be, I would share numbers with coaches. I wouldn't share the feelings I was having during rebuilding with coaches. So, like I said, I skipped the rugby event. I went on my solo weekend to the Airbnb, where things got real, right? So I'm going deep in on myself. And one of the things that came up in this whole thing too was even though everything is good, like I didn't necessarily feel safe. Not safe from harm, but safe in that, like, what if it happens again? I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. So how can I believe, or at least say that I believe, where the universe is conspiring in my favor 100% of the time, but then also just be waiting for the next bad thing to happen? People say be your authentic self, but I wasn't doing that. I was being the shell that I wanted to present as my authentic self. But if you say you spent years performing, then how the hell do you even know what that is, right? And that's what I had been doing. I had been performing as this guy who was unshakable and unflappable. So this happens. I go to the weekend and I truly start to dive into myself. And I tell you what, it's the weirdest damn thing. All these signs are out there if all you do is look for them. And these signs are just we'll call them little beacons that tell you you're pointed in the right direction. One of the things that happened this weekend was I got a email or a text message from a new associate because I had sent him a letter or I'd given him an offer letter and then I gave him time to think about it. And he didn't get back to me right away. And I told him he didn't have to, but he didn't get back to me as fast as I wanted him to either. But then while I was there and all this good stuff was happening, these good feelings were coming out, and I felt like I was truly making um, progress, if you will, on things that I hadn't worked on or thought of forever. I get a text message from the associate, and basically he accepted my offer, which was wonderful and terrifying at the same time because I've already had an associate and it didn't work out well. He didn't do what I needed him to do, and then he left. So, but also, what do I want this chiropractic thing to be? I want this thing to be massively successful. And I want it to be massively successful, but not all on my shoulders. And then I start doing this work. And what happens? The universe conspiring for my greatest good sends me an acceptance. So I'm trying again. And it's a sign that trying again isn't weakness, right? Trying again is grit. That's for damn sure. And it's the kind that matters when nobody's watching. And that's what was going on this weekend. There was nobody watching. But what I did was I made a promise to myself and I stuck to that promise. I'm not going to use this weekend to go away and sit and do nothing. I'm going to use this weekend to go away and sit and do great things. And man, I shit you not, the moment I started to do work on myself, the universe started conspiring in my greatest favor and started dropping little beacons, little navigational buoys, if you will, pointing me in the right direction and confirming in me that I was on the right path. So you got to realize with this, like, transformation isn't loud. It really isn't. It's internal. But once you get in there, man, it is loud as all hell. The screaming and the wailing and gnashing of teeth. It's less about your goals and more about your mentality. This podcast started as a giant middle finger, right? Now it's an invitation to be real, to get better, and to get back to the core of who we truly are. And that's some of the things that have come out with all of our past guests is getting to the core of why they do what they do and what keeps them going. And to the ones that have come on there and bared their souls, man, I really appreciate it. And even to those of you that haven't bared your soul, but still took the time to share your story, I really appreciate that too. For 100 episodes. So what I would like to do is I'd like to offer you a challenge. Are you running on old programming? Have you confused your armor with your identity? What would happen if you got quiet long enough to hear your real self speak again? What would that look like? What would that sound like? What could you do with that? One of the greatest pieces of advice that I've gotten in all my years of coaching, again, this was from Mark from Unforget Yourself. He told me once, what would future James do in whatever scenario it was we were talking about? And I don't remember the context or anything like that, but one of the exercises he gave, he goes, "You're a whiskey guy?" "Yes, sir, I am." "Why don't you take 2 glasses and I want you to pour a couple of fingers in each glass. One's for you, one's for future you. Go out back on your patio, light a fire if you want, if the weather provides, and invite your future self to sit down with a drink and ask it questions." And now that activity, that behavior got slightly remodeled this last week because I talked about this weekend that I had. He goes, "What was your favorite drink as a kid?" I said, "Capri Sun." He goes, "Cool. Go to the store, get a Capri Sun. Pour yourself your glass of whiskey, punch the straw into the Capri Sun, invite your past self to come and have a drink and talk to him. Ask him how he thinks you're doing. Then you'll realize you might be being a little hard on yourself." And you know what? It sounds very woo-woo, but it's powerful to have a drink with yourself, future and past. So, episode 100, my friends, is not a finish line, not in any way, shape, or form. This is a turning point, and we're going to build the next one together. The next 100 episodes are going to be done real, raw, and unfiltered in true fashion and true style of DFW Grit. As always, like, share, follow, pop over to Facebook, check out James N. Taylor, the professional page. Follow that. There's a lot of good reading on there. Hell, if you need a chiropractor, follow Spark Chiropractic's page while you're at it. Thank you again to everybody in any way, shape, or form, whether you've been in front of the camera or in front of the screen, for all 100 episodes. The next stack is going to be absolutely fantastic. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.